All right, this is the four-voice class. We're going to do some 180 warm-up. We have Mr. Richardson for the people and Mr. Canant for defense. Let's identify.
I am attorney for the people, Mr. Richardson.
I am the witness.
I am the court.
I'm Mr. Canant for defense.
And it's Mr. Richardson.
No, is it the court first?
The court.
It's the court, for
Sorry.
the record. Is Jim Smith here today?
No. During the conversation that you had with the defendant, was Mr. Corrales present in the room?
Which one is Mr. Corrales?
The one who handed the cocaine to Jim Smith?
Yes, everybody was present there.
Okay. During the time that Mr. Sanchez, the person who cut up the cocaine, during the time that he was cutting it up, was Mr. Corrales present in the room?
Yes, everybody was there.
How far away from where the cocaine was located was Mr. Corrales during the time that it was being cut up?
Right next to him, like between this gentleman and him.
That would be Mr. McGrew, the first attorney from me, and Detective Higginbotham.
Yes,
About 3 feet.
3 feet, Your Honor.
Depends on whose feet you're talking about, Mr. Richardson.
After Jim Smith received the cocaine, what did you and he do then?
we went outside and we went to the car.
Did anybody go outside with you that had been in the motel room?
Yes, the guy in the sweatpants, he just walked us halfway, then he stayed in the apartment.
Who was that?
The guy in the sweatpants?
Oh,
He went outside just to take us outside, that's all. He walked us out.
Okay. And was there anybody in sweatpants besides the person you've identified as Mr. Sanchez?
Yeah, just the guy in the sweatpants. He's the only one that walked outside.
Was there more than one person in sweatpants that day or just one?
Just one. The rest were in regular pants.
When did the guy in the sweatpants went outside with you? Did he say anything to you?
Yes, he said the next time he wanted a gun, rifle or machine guns, and to let him know. He told me a nickname, but I forgot.
I'm sorry?
He told me he had a nickname, but I forgot what it was.
After you left the apartment, where did you go?
We went back to the car.
Okay. Was Mr. Smith with you at that time?
Yes, sir.
And after you got to the car, what did you do?
We said, let's party, and the police officers arrived and stuff.
Was there a particular reason that you said, let's party?
Yeah, that was a code.
It was a code word?
Yes.
Were you supposed to say that, let's party?
Yes, as soon as we had the stuff in our hands.
All right. And after you said the words, did you move your car?
No, sir.
Did the police come to your car?
Yes, sir.
Did you recognize the police officers that came to your car?
I don't know what they look like, but no, I don't recognize them.
Then what happened?
We got arrested.
Did police officers stay with you?
Yes, sir.
Did Detective Blanusa eventually come to where you were?
Yes, sir.
And did you see him take anything from Mr. Smith?
No, sir, I didn't see that.
Were you with Mr. Smith the entire time until Detective Blanusa came to where you and Mr. Smith were?
Yes, sir.
Did you see Mr. Smith get any small rolled up packages from anybody else before Detective Blanusa came?
Yeah, well, inside the apartment. I mean the motel when the guy handed the cocaine to Jim.
Okay, you saw that?
That's all, yeah.
Did you see anybody else ever hand anything to Mr. Smith after that?
No, sir, just a box of cigarettes. They were handed to me because I asked for a cigarette.
Who handed you the box of cigarettes?
I don't remember.
After you said the code words, let's party, did you ever leave your car to go to another car?
No, sir.
Were you ever in a police car after that?
No. Okay, we were inside the car, the plane car, okay? Then the police cars started showing up, you know, and then the police officer came around my side and told me to get out of the car. No, wait a minute, that's wrong. He told Jim Smith to get out of the car. Then he told me to stay in the car. Oh, wait a minute. Raphael was in the back seat too, okay? So 3 of us were in the car.
Were you placed in a police car?
Pardon me?
Were you put in a police car?
Yes, sir. But we were handcuffed.
Okay. And was Mr. Smith placed in the same police car?
Yes, we were in the back seat.
Was he also handcuffed?
Yes, sir.
And did you and Mr. Smith remain in that police car until Detective Blanusa came?
Yes, sir.
While you were handcuffed in the back of the police car with Mr. Smith, do you know where Mr. Sanchez was, the man you met in the bar?
Yeah, he was sitting on the steps going up to the room.
He was not in the police car?
No, sir.
No other questions.
Okay, let's see. Who wants to start? I guess we can start with Mr. Canat.
Can I just have about 1 minute, please, Your Honor, to talk?
Yes, let's take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, thank you.
We've got Kim Reed here. Does anybody mind if we interrupt and take her testimony?
I don't, Your Honor.
Okay, proceed.
Do we have a prosecutor?
Let's get Mr. Richardson here. Mr. Diaz, I'm going to ask you to step down, remain outside. We have Kim Reed here, Mr. Richardson. So let's put her on.
All right.
Call Kim Reed, please.
Your Honor, I think it would make more sense for me to finish the cross-examination.
No, she's here.
Yeah, but everything is not here.
Huh?
Everything is not here. The narcotics are not here.
Okay, if it's okay with you.
It would make more sense to put her on next.
Okay, call Mr. Diaz back. All right, you're back on the stand, Mr. Diaz. Mr. Canat, are you ready now?
Yes. Mr. Diaz, you said you were working off some sort of arrangement, a ticket that you have.
Yes, sir.
What charge was that, please?
What was it for?
Yes.
It was for selling alcohol to minors.
And anything else?
No, that's it.
Were you a store clerk or something like that?
No, I went to go and rent a movie, and this girl asked me if I wanted to. She gave me some money if I would buy alcohol for her, and I said I would.
And how long ago did that happen?
It was in March or February of this year.
Of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
And you entered into some arrangement with the sheriff's department, right?
Yes, sir.
Who did you make the arrangement with, make the deal with?
With Steve Blanusa and Higginbotham.
Anybody else?
Oh, and first I talked to Detective Del Nero,
Okay,
Gary Del Nero.
okay.
Then he talked to Steve.
Is he the officer who busted you or arrested you for selling to minors?
Oh, no, it was another officer, a plane car.
And when was it you entered into the agreement with Detective Higginbotham and Detective Blanusa?
What day was it?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't remember.
What month was it?
It was in February or the beginning of March.
And did you enter into a written agreement with them, or was it just a verbal agreement?
I read something, then I signed it, you know.
Okay, you signed it?
Yes.
Did you retain a copy of it?
No.
How many buys were you supposed to make?
Okay, we're going to increase the speed now to 200, so we'll do this in 15s, where we left off. Yep.
Mr. Richardson, for the record, I'm going to object, Your Honor. I'll assert the privilege that this may go to expose this witness to danger, and I don't think that it's relevant.
Your Honor?
Well, he's been revealed as the informant. Once you do that,
But only in this case. There may be either situations where he's not revealed. I can't represent that's true or not true to the court at this point in time. There may be cases he's worked out that there have not been charges filed. First of all, I don't think it's relevant, any other work he's done. Second of all, it may well expose him and endanger him. And to that extent, he's not revealed. And I would object and assert the privilege.
well, he's certainly not revealed in other cases. I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, could I be heard?
Yeah,
Well, the prosecution doesn't hold the privilege to assert.
well, they have a privilege as to his testimony in other cases in which he might be an informant.
May I help, Your Honor?
Yes,
I think the question was how many buys was he supposed to make? I think that is relevant and not privileged. If he's going to make one buy and that takes care of his beef, that's one thing. But if he's got to make 10 or 20 buys, I think we're entitled to know that without perhaps knowing to whom they're going to.
All right, we're back on the record with the court.
and it's the court for the record. All right, we've had a question before, and I've never heard the objection to it.
I think that even the mere fact that he has been, if he has been, involved in any other transactions exposes him.
How many buys are you going to make under the agreement that you entered into?
Didn't say. They didn't say.
Well, what were you supposed to do?
What was I supposed to do?
Yes?
Well, bust people to sell stolen stuff or pick up hookers. That's all.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
And what were you going to get in exchange for busting people and picking up hookers?
They would be cleared off, or, it would be taken off my record.
What would be taken off your record?
The ticket for selling that alcohol to a girl.
And you said you had to bust people. What do you mean by bust people?
Well, sell stolen stuff or whatever.
Who was going to supply you with the stolen goods?
Supply?
Yes, where were you getting the stolen goods from?
Steve?
And has your charge of sales to a minor been dismissed yet?
I think so.
And besides trying to sell stolen goods and trying to pick up prostitutes, what else does your agreement require you to do?
That's all, just that.
Well, aren't you required to come to court?
Oh, yeah, that. To come over here and testify, yes.
And you're supposed to come to court for every case you get involved in that they ask you?
Yes?
And did they tell you when you're working whether or not you're allowed to use any sort of alcoholic beverages?
No.
They didn't tell you that?
No.
How about drugs? Did they tell you anything about drugs while you were working for them?
What? Drugs?
Yes.
What do you mean?
Well, you signed an agreement, right?
Yes.
And did that agreement have the rules on it?
Yes.
And did it say anything on there whether or not you were allowed to be using any sort of drugs while you're working for them?
No, no drugs.
It didn't say anything about that?
Can't use any drugs, no.
And the agreement you signed, was there a date on it?
Yes.
What was that date, please?
I don't remember.
So you went to the La Palma bar, right?
Yes.
You've been there before?
No.
Never been inside?
No.
And when you were talking with someone there in the bar, was that talking English or Spanish?
Spanish.
And the person answered in Spanish?
Pardon me?
The person you were talking about answered in Spanish?
Yes, he was drunk.
Now, the guy that was drunk was the one who took you back to the Seabreeze Motel?
Yes.
He was drunk?
Yes.
While you were talking, what was Jim Smith doing?
He was putting a quarter in the pool table so we can play some while I talked.
How long were you in the bar? About a half hour?
No, just a few minutes.
Would you give an estimate, please, how much you mean by a few minutes?
I'd say about 7.
How many games of pool did Jim Smith play?
None. He was just putting the quarter in the table so we can play. We set it up and everything, but we didn't get to play.
How many other people were in the bar aside from you and Jim Smith and the guy who took you back to the Seabreeze Motel?
How many customers were there?
Yes.
Quite a few, plus the girls in the bar.
How many? Couple of dozen?
Yeah, I'd say about that.
And most of the people in there, or probably all of them, were Mexican, right?
Yes.
And how many people did you see Jim Smith talking to?
How many people did Jim talk to?
Yes.
None.
I thought you said he was trying to set up a game with somebody.
No, he was trying to set up a game with me so we could play, but, we didn't play.
So what was Jim doing during that time?
He was...
I'll object as vague as to what time.
Well, during the time in the bar, I presume.
What was he doing?
Overruled.
Huh?
Go ahead and answer the question. What was he doing?
He was setting up the game.
Okay, and after he did the setting up of the game, what was he doing?
Then he was waiting for me, till I got done talking. Then he went to, listen to some music.
Where did he go listen to music?
Right there by the jukebox, next to the jukebox.
You weren't watching Jim all the time, were you?
No.
You talked to more than one person in the bar, didn't you?
Yes, him and another gentleman.
By him, you're referring to the guy who went with you back to the motel, right?
Right.
You talked to another guy before that, right?
Yes.
And that guy offered to buy a stolen DVD player, right?
Yes.
And that guy you talked to in Spanish also?
Yes.
And what did Jim Smith order from the bar?
Nothing.
How long were you talking to that guy who took you back to the motel? How long were you talking with him in the bar before you left?
For a few minutes.
What portion of the time were you talking with him? You said you were in the bar for several minutes, right?
Yes, for several minutes.
Okay.
How long was I talking to him? I don't know. I don't remember.
At some point, you and Jim Smith left the bar, right?
Yes.
And did you follow that other guy out?
Which one?
the one who showed you where the room was?
Yes, all three of us left together.
Okay, you got in your car, right?
Yes,
Who was sitting alongside you up in the front seat?
Jim Smith.
The other guy was in the back,
Yes,
and he directed you how to get to the Seabreeze Motel?
yes.
And when he directed you, was he telling you in Spanish or English?
Spanish. Then I was telling Jim where to go. The guy that took me to the motel, he told me in Spanish. Then I told Jim, and he also told me if the people over there at the motel didn't want to buy it, that he also knew somebody else.
When he got to the motel, though, he apparently didn't know what room.
No.
Is that correct?
Yes, he didn't know. First he went to another room, but like I said, there was a girl there, and he asked her if she knew these guys, and she said, yes, this room.
Okay, and did the guy knock on the door? The guy you brought from the bar, did he knock on the door?
No, he went inside. They both did, the girl and the guy.
They just walked in?
Yes.
And what were you and Jim doing?
We were waiting in the car. He told us to go in, and I said, no, that's okay. We'll wait out here.
And how long did you wait inside your car before you went in the room?
About not even a minute.
Who came out to call you?
The guy in sweatpants?
The guy that was with you?
No, the guy in the sweatpants.
Okay.
The guy that was with me, he was inside.
Well, when you walked inside, you didn't take in your DVD player yet, right?
No.
And then you and Jim both went into the room
Yes.
and you started talking.
Yes.
Now, did you ever speak in English while you were there?
No, just to Jim, just to translate.
And who came back out for the DVD player?
We both did.
Anybody walk outside with you guys?
No,
And who carried the DVD player back inside?
Jim did. No, that's wrong. I did.
At that point, Mr. Corrales hadn't said anything yet, correct?
Corrales? Oh, no, he didn't say nothing.
In fact, the entire time in the room, he didn't say anything, correct?
Right?
To whom exactly did you offer to give the DVD player for some drugs? Which gentleman was it?
The gentleman in the sweatpants?
Mhm. And that's a person you felt was the main person, right?
Yes.
How long did the negotiations or the bargaining for the trade for the DVD player for the drugs, how long did that take? How many minutes?
I remember asking the time to that girl. Oh, no, we talked to Jim. I said, I wonder what time it is. And the girl answered it was 10 or 5 minutes to 8.
So how long were you in the room?
I don't know.
Was it about 15 minutes or closer to like 3 or 4 minutes?
I think it was closer to 3 or 4 minutes.
And which person told you guys or told Jim that you can go in the bathroom and try it out?
The guy with the sweatpants.
Pardon me?
The guy in the sweatpants.
I take it all Mr. Corrales did was hand you the cocaine?
Yeah, that's all he did. Hand Jim the stuff.
Hand Jim the cocaine?
Yeah.
Mr. Diaz, didn't you tell the police officers about what happened in there, right?
Yes.
Didn't you tell the police officers that Mr. Corrales handed that little bindle to somebody else instead of Mr. Smith?
No, he handed it to Jim.
Well, didn't you tell the police something different?
I don't remember. All I know is that he handed it to Jim. He bumped him in the elbow, and then he said, here it is.
Well, you told the police officer, didn't you, that Martinez handed the bindle to Smith?
I'm going to object as asked and answered.
Overruled. He's debated the question. He hasn't really answered it.
Didn't you tell the police, Detective Blanusa, didn't you tell him that Corrales handed the thing to Martinez and Martinez was the one that handed it to Smith?
Yes.
You told him that, right?
Yes.
And that was right after it happened, right?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Diaz, is it safe to say either what you said today or what you told the officer back then, one of them is incorrect, right?
Right. I don't remember. Yes.
As you're sitting here now, do you remember which is correct?
All I know is that guy, handed the stuff to Jim. He bumped him on the elbow.
Which guy?
The guy over there.
Corrales?
Yes.
So your testimony today is that Mr. Corrales is the one that handed it to Smith.
Right, sir.
Mr. Diaz, isn't it safe to say that you're not really sure who handed it to Mr. Smith? Isn't that what really happened? You're not really sure.
Well, all I know is that he was carrying it and he handed it to him.
Well, when you told the police officer something different.
Your Honor, for the record, the witness made some motions with his hand that appeared to point first to Mr. Sanchez and then to Mr. Corrales when he was talking.
All right.
Well, I'm not sure, Your Honor. Since they're all here to this side of the room, I don't see that any motions he made. I didn't see any motions, but if he did, I didn't see it.
Who were you motioning about?
I went like that and then like that.
You're talking about this gentleman here?
Yes.
All right, that's Mr. Sanchez.
14, okay.
Okay, we're going to repeat some of that at 210 words per minute, beginning in colloquy with the court.
And it's the court for the record. Well, they have a privilege as to his testimony in other cases in which he might be an informant.
May I help, Your Honor?
Yes,
I think the question was how many buys was he supposed to make? I think that is relevant and not privileged. If he's going to make one buy and that takes care of his beef, that's one thing. But if he's got to make 10 or 20 buys, I think we're entitled to know that without perhaps knowing to whom they're going to.
all right, we've had a question before and I've never heard the objection to it.
I think that even the mere fact that he has been, if he has been, involved in any other transactions exposes him.
How many buys are you going to make under the agreement that you entered into?
Didn't say. They didn't say.
Well, what were you supposed to do?
What was I supposed to do?
Yes.
Well, bust people to sell stolen stuff or pick up hookers. That's all.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
And what were you going to get in exchange for busting people and picking up hookers?
They would be cleared off or, it would be taken off my record.
What would be taken off your record?
The ticket for selling alcohol to that girl.
And you said you had to bust people. What do you mean by bust people?
Well, sell stolen stuff or whatever.
Who was going to supply you with the stolen goods?
Supply?
Yes. Where were you getting the stolen goods from?
Steve?
And has your charge of sales to a minor been dismissed yet?
I think so.
And besides trying to sell stolen goods and trying to pick up prostitutes, what else does your agreement require you to do?
That's all, just that.
Well, aren't you required to come to court?
Oh, yeah, that. To come over here and testify, yes.
And you're supposed to come to court for every case you get involved in that they ask you?
Yes.
And did they tell you when you're working whether or not you're allowed to use any sort of alcoholic beverages?
No.
They didn't tell you that?
No.
How about drugs? Did they tell you anything about drugs while you were working for them?
What? Drugs?
Yes.
What do you mean?
Well, you signed an agreement, right?
Yes.
And did that agreement have the rules on it?
Yes.
And did it say anything on there whether or not you were allowed to be using any sort of drugs while you're working for them?
No, no drugs.
It didn't say anything about that?
Can't use any drugs, no.
And the agreement you signed, was there a date on it?
Yes.
What was that date, please?
I don't remember.
So you went to the La Palma bar, right?
Yes.
You've been there before?
No.
Never been inside?
No.
And when you were talking with someone there in the bar, was that talking English or Spanish?
Spanish.
And the person answered in Spanish?
Pardon me?
The person you were talking about answered in Spanish?
Yes, he was drunk.
Now, the guy that was drunk was the one who took you back to the Seabreeze Motel?
Yes.
He was drunk?
Yes.
While you were talking, what was Jim Smith doing?
He was putting a quarter in the pool table so we can play some while I talked.
How long were you in the bar? About half an hour?
No, just a few minutes.
Would you give an estimate, please, how much you mean by a few minutes?
I'd say about 7.
How many games of pool did Jim play?
None. He was just putting the quarter in the table so we can play. We set it up and everything, but we didn't get to play.
How many other people were in the bar aside from you and Jim Smith and the guy who took you back to the Seabreeze Motel?
How many customers were there?
Yes.
Quite a few, plus the girls in the bar.
How many? Couple of dozen?
Yeah, I'd say about that.
And most of the people in there, or probably all of them, were Mexican, right?
Yes.
And how many people did you see Jim Smith talking to?
How many people did Jim talk to?
Yes.
None.
I thought you said he was trying to set up a game with somebody.
No, he was trying to set up a game with me so we could play, but we didn't play.
So what was Jim doing during that time?
He
I'll
was,
object as vague as to what time.